happy to see so many people are still here. We always worry about being the last day and people traveling early in the morning to go back to their home. So we really are grateful and thankful for you to be here today with us. We're going to get started. We're going to do a little introduction and welcomes today. We're going to go through our presentation overview, and then we're going to go through a Q&A or a feasibility exercise. It's really an engagement exercise to kind of get you thinking along the lines and helping us think some more about our concept that we're presenting on today. And then we're going to do a question and answer, and then we'll close out the session for today. And so we hope that you get everything that we have prepared to get out of this session today. And so I am Paige. I am an educational outreach manager / retention advisor at Georgia Tech here in Atlanta, Georgia. And my co-partner here.
My name is Simmons. I work on the operations and transfer team in the Office of Undergraduate Admission.
Okay. And so I want to do a little gauge of the room. How many of you are here from community colleges? One. 4-year public. Okay. Private institutions. How many of you are in a senior leadership role at your institution where you have some decision-making power? 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5, 6, 7. Okay, good. We want you all to play real close attention, okay? Okay, so when you go back home, you got some decisions to kind of help make if this concept is not already on your campus. So that's what we want to look at today. So thank you again for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started into the meat of the presentation.
So, of course, we're Georgia Tech. We are a 4-year public institution located in Atlanta. For our Georgia State people in here, we're kind of bumping heads as we both are expanding. We have more than 25,000 undergraduate and graduate students, and that's broken up with between 6 schools that we have. That's engineering, computing, the College of Sciences, the Scheller College of Business, the College of Design, and now Ivan Allen Liberal Arts College. So who are our transfer students? We get transfer students from a wide variety of sources. Some of those we give out through our first-year process, and some of those are just going to be our regular transfer students who are interested after attending another institution. So they comprise of 25% of our total campus population. Interesting fact, we found out this past May that transfer students made up 30% of our graduating class. So our transfer student numbers are growing, and they do have different paths that I'll talk about in regards to pathways, but also dual enrollment. We consider a student who has taken dual enrollment courses and graduated high school to be a transfer student. So post-high school graduation, they can come in through our transfer process, but they must graduate at the time the application is open. And then we also look at our minority student populations. And with regards to ethnic and racial minorities, we look at that a little bit differently due to how our campus is compromised. We only look at Hispanic and Black or African American students as being our minority in regards to that, because the majority of our population is white, Asian, and Indian on our campus. We also have students with disabilities, first-generation students, and we also consider veterans to be one of our minority groups, and we do offer some things for them. Looking at our profile, we have a 8% Black and 10% Hispanic population on our campus, and that is not counting those students who may consider themselves 2 or more to be within those numbers. We're 65% male and 35% female, and looking at our most recent class, women made up 30% of our most recent year of incoming students. And then curricular pathways, again, that we have through our various colleges. And we have a 17% non-Georgia admit rate and a 50% Georgia admit rate. For our public schools, being a public institution, we do have to serve the state of Georgia as a priority. So we want to make sure that we're doing that through our admission process. So our pathway programs, so if a student applies through our first year process and they are denied, we have various pathways that they can use to have a 1-year experience at another institution and apply to our secure pathway. So arts and sciences, if you're applying to liberal arts, our College of Sciences, our College of Design, you can come in through that pathway. Conditional transfer pathway, that is what we consider to be students who have parents or grandparents who are alumni, or students who have parents who work at the institution currently. They can also receive a pathway. Our talent initiative pathway, that is our newest pathway, where students who are first year and get denied and are Pell eligible will receive this pathway. So if they're eligible for the Pell Grant, we make sure that we give them that opportunity to get to Georgia Tech. Arts and sciences is limited to only Georgia and domestic non-residents. Conditional, that is open to anyone as long as they meet the qualifications. And the talent initiative is Georgia and domestic only. Then we have the Georgia First pathway, which is one we rolled out last year, which for any Georgia resident who meets the NACAC definition of a first-gen student, whereas their parent has not earned at least an associate's degree, they will qualify for this pathway. And the reason we make that distinction is because within USG, if a parent has at least earned a certificate, that student is no longer a first-gen student within USG or the University System of Georgia. Then we have the Regents Engineering Pathway Program. That is where we open that up to all the USG institutions, that as long as the students are meeting some of those higher course requirements by major, they get a holistic review, but they're reviewed differently than our regular transfer admission process. And we also have a dual degree engineering pathway, and that is something that is very vital. One of our institutions here, Oglethorpe is here, that we have a partnership with, where it's mainly for our minority institutions or our single gender serving institutions, where those students, they can have a secure path to Georgia Tech through our 3-2 program, which is managed by our Center for Engineering, Education, and Diversity. And then, of course, the Veterans Pathway. Recently released veterans can get a pathway into 5 of the 6. They cannot get the pathway into engineering, but they can even get that for our College of Computing.
Okay, so with that, with all the great things that we have as entryways and pathways for our Georgia Tech students coming in as transfer students, we all know that there are significantly more barriers for transfer students and minority transfer students. And so when we were looking at the data, we saw this, this quote. I actually met Dr. Fink yesterday in a session. It was so interesting, and I was like, are you the same Fink that I just cited in my presentation? And he said yes. So I was like, wow, okay, good. We're at the same conference. But as you can see, 14% of students who intend to get a bachelor's degree, only 14% of them actually do, versus 60% of their their counterparts. And that is a really big gap, which means that we have a lot of work to do. And so we want to make sure that we're, intentionally looking at these barriers to kind of bridge this gap and make concessions for students who are, experiencing these barriers. And so one of the things that Evan and I have been looking at with this transfer process, these barriers. So we want to kind of look at the overall common barriers that students are experiencing overall, not just specific to Georgia Tech first. And so some of these common barriers, we know that there's a slow momentum to degree, because when you're at a community college, most of the times what we're experiencing and seeing is that students are taking remedial courses, or they're working and going to school part-time, which limits their amount of credits that they can take at those community colleges, as well as they're taking some courses that are ineligible transfer credits. And so that creates a slow momentum to that 4-year bachelor's degree. We have unclear transfer pathways. We've talked about the articulation agreements over and over again, and Evan can speak to that later about what we went through to kind of get better articulation agreements with our partners. And so we also are looking at students who are getting transfer credits less than 60 hours. Typically, when you're leaving a community college, you're transferring in your junior year. And so what we're seeing is that students are not reaching that benchmark at the community colleges. And so they're not getting to that starting point where they can still continue to keep their pace and continue on to that bachelor's degree. Transfer timing, some of them are taking three or more years to even get to the transfer process. Again, it could be for some of those first initial, they're working part-time, they have families, they have other things that are, slowing down that timing to get to the transfer process. And then the process itself. How many know that the politics and processes is not always clear? So that time and that process to transfer is also making those barriers a little bit more. Leaving cards on the table. We have students who just stop at associate's degree because maybe they feel like it's too hard, it's taking up too much time. There are other dynamics, life experiences that have told that we're just going to stop here. And then also the process to degree. Again, there's several steps that after you are getting to that associate's degree, you're finishing your community college years, but that campus or that institution you're trying to go to, their processes are not clear, they're not apparent, it's a lot of work. And so these are things that are happening in our barriers for our transfer students across the world. So Evan and I came together last year after this conference, and we were like, this was not new to me because my background is advising, and Evan has been in enrollment services, but we were kind of looking at, I work in one of the largest colleges at Georgia Tech, the College of Engineering, in our pathway programs. He had to like really sit me down in a whole meeting to kind of explain all of this. Because I mean, I understood there was a transfer process, but again, the barriers that our students are dealing with, even getting into our programs, once they get there, there's still problems. So we were trying to look at this idea and concept of what could we do at Georgia Tech, or what could we propose, remember our money people, what could we propose to our institution leaders about how to address some of these issues and barriers, and a lot of changing our culture here at Georgia Tech. And so what we're going to do is ask you to go through the exercise, kind of what we went through. How many of you already have a one-stop model at your institution? Okay. What services do you have in your one-stop?
We have financial aid, business office, also like processing of forms, and then also too, because we're a small institution, we have a little bit more connection with direct advising over particular areas.
Okay. And I saw someone in the back here who had I have to bring the mic to you. Somebody raised their hand. One stop. Yes. Sorry.
So we have financial aid, class registration, and some admission advising. Yeah.
Okay. One more. We saw one over here.
Yeah, we have admissions, financial aid, registrar, and the bursar's office.
Sure. Okay. So we are proposing a one-stop shop model, and we kind of looked at what campus partners would be essential in this. And so what we did was this feasibility study, so that when we propose to our leaders at Georgia Tech, we want to have our game in line. Like, we want to know that we have proven this, we've done the research, we have the data, we have gotten your feedback here at a national conference, and it is for the study of transfer students, because as you know, Georgia Tech is a research institution, so we have to prove what we say, or what we ask for. And so, I want to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to cast yourself in this prompted exercise, and we have handouts. I don't know how many people are in the room, but we have about 40. It is also should be uploaded on the NIST app. And so what we're going to do is ask you to cast yourself in a senior leadership role. So our people who are in these roles already, if you could disperse yourself and be in a group, that would be great, because we really want your feedback of if this kind of idea was presented to you and you did not have this at your campus. And then we want you to consider what your campus strategic vision is and mission is as you support academically, socially, and culturally inclusive campus, and how a one-stop model would fit into that model. And then we want you to evaluate, as we have done, what this idea and concept would look like. And what we will show you our thoughts and our process as well as we go through this. So we're going to take a little time to kind of go through and do the exercise. And then there are instructions. I know we don't have tables and like you can't write, and this is a really large sheet of paper, but we can pretend. I can use the chalkboard if we want to just do it. I mean, not the chalkboard, but the easel board. And then I'm going to take a few examples as you're talking through and write them on the easel here, because we don't have like a place. And then, so we're going to look at the problem, we're going to look at our target audiences, we're going to do strategic goals, and then we're going to look at issues. You know, when you present an idea, you always have to tell them what the challenges are going to be, pros versus cons. And then we're going to look at the considerations and how we're going to justify this through an assessment feasibility concept foundation. And then we're going to look at the value proposition. Basically, why is this important? Why do we need it? And then how is it consistent with those things that we proposed prior to this? So, ready? Yes. Go.
All right, so we're going to kind of bring it in, and sounds like we had a lot of great conversations taking place. And so what we want to do is we're going to go through the feasibility assessment, and we're going to call on various groups who, of course, want to answer, just to see what the different groups found as problems, target audiences, and things like that. So is there anyone who wants to give us one of their problems that they came up with? Yes, sir.
How you doing? We found a lot of problems. One of the biggest things that we talked about was the ability to fit in.
Oh, my bad.
Oh, my bad. Hello, everyone. My name is Amory Thompson. No, but one of the biggest problems that we see is the ability to fit in for the transfer student when they get there. What is there to do for them? What skills are they acquiring, and what activities are they engaging in?
One more.
So we wrote down 3 problems. First one was financial aid, of course. The second was the assumption of all their credits will come over as a transfer student. And then the next one was lack of knowledge regarding campus resources.
Okay, one more for problems. Yes.
The assumption that transfer students already know what they're doing, they've been there and done that. So transitioning to the new institution, they should already know.
That is really great because right in our back door, we have the AUC, the Atlanta University Center, which is Morehouse, Clark, and Spelman. And one of the things we faced was that they felt that they wouldn't fit into an institution like Georgia Tech. So Xavier was great with that first problem that he came up with. Who wants to share with us their target audience? Target audience.
All right. Well, we wrote down a lot. So the ones that we wrote down was the bursar, registrars, health services, admissions, the bookstore, academic advisement of departments, which will include that, housing, financial aid, and auxiliary services.
All right, bookstore was an interesting one. The whole school will be under this one-stop shop.
So one of our students here, Isis from University of Wisconsin-Madison, shared just the transition aspect. So a lot of one-stops have the common bursar, financial aid, advisement, things like that. But one thing that we talked about is possibly having student affairs, so to help with the adjustment aspect, even if it was floating or so-called office hours available.
That is really great because, as we know, students do not operate from that 8 to 4:30 that we have at our institutions. What about strategies and goals? Strategies and goals. I'm going to start calling on people. Strategies and goals.
One of the strategies would be to have one night a week, some late hours, some after normal business hours, maybe till 7 o'clock.
All right, staying late for our students to serve them better. Anybody else have any strategies and goals that they want to highlight?
One thing that we're looking into is, on the career services side of our office already does this. I'm an academic advisor, but doing partner hours in each other's offices. So I've already talked to Campus Climate about doing that, student support services. So kind of putting each other in each other's office to build that coalition.
Thank you. One more for strategies and goals.
I would say to meet them where they're at, knowing that some students live on campus, going to the residence halls and building that connection with that department so that you can meet them instead of them having to come meet you.
So how many institutions that within maybe admissions and registrar have nothing to do with residence life and meeting students regarding their dormitories? Yeah. Nothing. So like one institution I was at, admissions was kind of involved in that process of helping them transition. So we had some role to play in that transition. So so when students move on campus, there's nothing that any office does in regards to help them transition to on campus.
No, but here's the webpage. Like, let me refer you to the webpage. My office, I'm the Transfer Resource Center at the College of Charleston, and I was getting a lot of questions from students about housing and what's the timing of it, and I noticed on the website the current students have this date, and then my date is 6 months later, will I have housing? And I don't know. And so we did have a meeting with housing, and they gave us, some information enough to share, but I refer them to that office because I'm new there too. So I refer them to that office for that information.
Gotcha.
I'm working residential life, right? So I'm like one of the only two people. I think it's like two of us in here. But one thing being a residential life that I've understood from the students aspect is that a handoff is always great, right? So if you don't know what's going on, being able to pass them directly to somebody, that connection helps them a lot, especially for living on campus, because when you're living on campus and you don't know what's going on, having someone that can push you exactly with the answers that you need and walk away with that material so that you have those questions answered and don't have to jump from Lisa to Paul to Frank to George and then leave with nothing will be so beneficial for them. So build that campus partnership with Res Life.
Gotcha. That is great. Kim, what did I leave off on? Where we on?
You're in impediments and issues.
Impediments and issues. Any other impediments and issues anybody wants to share?
I think the issue with, I know with our institution is that we're so large that we end up being in silos and that everybody just ends up doing their own thing and trying to decide who would be in one place when everybody is separate. So I guess it's just trying to at least break down the silos, even if you're not in a one-stop shop, to at least get everybody working together. But I think that was our biggest thing we were talking about.
Anything else? One more for impediments and issues?
Our school is fairly large as well, and I find that although the One Stop is supposed to cater to everybody, there's still some people that get kind of lost in the mix. So you may think that you're going to One Stop to get a certain issue resolved, but then you still have to go back, especially if you're a grad student or a veteran, to the veterans office or to the grad school and get other things resolved there that you would think would be able to be resolved through the One Stop.
Great.
Hey, thank you so much. I think we have a one-stop shop transfer center in a sense at UCLA. I think one impediment or issue is that sometimes you become the only person on campus or the one point person, then everyone goes to you for transfer, and I think it can't just be one person on campus. And so this idea that we're all transfer champions, that we all should have transfer awareness of our transfer community, I think that can be a problem of a one-stop shop, is then you become that one person or that one set of people that know the answer, and then no one else really gets to integrate that pedagogy into their practice.
That is great. Assessment and feasibility. Assessment and feasibility. Who wants to go on that one? Somebody. Anybody.
And kind of think of it in the concept of when you're thinking about assessment or feasibility, like we're supposed to do assessment, like it's supposed to be a continuous cycle. But I can say for Georgia Tech, essentially in my unit, College of Engineering, we do a lot of assessment, but it is siloed, or whoever said that, it's siloed. And so you have all this information, we were in a session yesterday, what do you do with it, how do you use it, is it effective, is it right? That can be a problem with assessment. So it challenges the feasibility of something like this to be sustainable. So kind of think of it in that concept.
I was thinking making sure that whatever you're measuring is in alignment with the strategic goals of the university. So speaking the same exact language as what's exact same language that's in the strategic goal is important.
I would also say like the location. Again, like location and facilities is like really is really a prime problem, like for most institutions. So it's just depending if it's central, if it is central, where is it, you know, the campus, like, and then also like we talked about like hours as well, like how does that look, like what's the assets for that?
I would say like familiarity and like connectability. So like understanding that we can help you here, but you have, obviously you're gonna, outside of here, have your own challenges with certain classes, certain things like that, and social things. So like them understanding everybody else on campus, every other department and things like that, understanding that we're here helping transfer students, this is how we do it, you know what I mean? And this is how you could best service transfer students when they come to like see you or see guidance from you. You know what I mean? Because obviously we can't do every single thing when it comes to like education, stuff like that.
Most definitely expanding the amount of transfer champions on campus and those who understand it.
When I think of assessment, sometimes I think of a pre-test, post-test. So maybe looking at the current help seeking on campus and maybe with the departments that you plan on putting to this one-stop shop and looking at how long it takes a student to get help normally now and then what it might look like after once you created a one-stop shop, the time that it takes a student to get the resources and how many people they have to talk to get those resources.
All right, what about value proposition?
Who can sell this who can sell this like in two lines, sell it?
This is cheesy, but transfer students are the way of the future. More and more of our students are becoming transfer students and having additional barriers. So we need to be able to keep those students and retain those students and help them reach their goals.
One more? Yes, ma'am.
One for me. Transfer students are nearly 60% of our population. Take away 60% of your paycheck.
So,
I like that. Who said that?
Oh, wow.
I like that one. If that don't sell it.
So wow. So although transfer students comprise 25% of our student population, I don't want to lose 25% of my check either. I think if we all did that, things would happen a lot faster. It is.
Okay.
All right.
So we're going to show you what we came up with, and why we felt like this was a goal for Georgia Tech to really consider and implement into our campus. So these are our personal challenges here at Georgia Tech. Our transfer students, experience significantly more academic preparedness as a barrier. Not to say that our community colleges are not preparing them, it's just that bigger institution, the academic rigor is a big part of that, the increased academic rigor, because they are still doing the science and math to get into Georgia Tech, they're doing all of the prerequisites and things like that, but it's the learning styles that are our teaching styles at Georgia Tech. A lot of our engineering schools and science, college of science, their problem-based learning is the foundation of learning styles. A lot of students are not coming from that hands-on problem-based learning concept, particularly in my major, biomedical engineering. It's a huge transition for a lot of our students. And what we're seeing now is more students with learning disabilities. They don't really learn the way that they're being taught. So that's a big challenge. Still having that work-life balance. We still have a lot of our transfer students who are kind of older students. Some of them are the traditional coming from community college, but we still have those who are still having to work to pay for their tuition and support here at Georgia Tech. And financial aid is a big issue. We do not provide financial aid for our transfer students at Georgia Tech or scholarships.
What? Oh, hell.
So, regarding financial support,
wait.
Let us fix this and keep our jobs.
Let us fix this and keep our job, yes.
So for a lot of our students, they are Georgia residents, so for them, their main thing will be Zell or the Hope Scholarship. But as far as Georgia Tech handing out awards, pre-enrollment, that is not something that happens for our students.
Is that just transfers?
that is just transfer. A lot of the money that they have goes toward merit aid and scholarships for our first-year students. But again, they're 25% of our campus, so we have to begin to at least allocate some aid toward them.
Okay. And then, so that also prohibits the social and cultural integration, because if they're having to work to pay for their tuition and student fees, it's very hard for them to socially acclimate into the campus and to the cultural, it is a cultural barrier as well. And then that creates decreased focus, confidence, and motivation in the programs that they're doing of study here at Georgia Tech. So these are kind of some of the things that are essential to our challenges at Georgia Tech for our transfer students. And so what we want to talk about is, and I'll hand it over to Evan, is who we thought would be our target audience, who would be central to having an effective one-stop model for our campus partners and groups.
So based on how our institution is broken down, we have Office of Enrollment Management, which is, of course, the Office of Undergraduate Admission, the Registrar's Office, and the Office of Scholarships and Financial Aid. And a lot of the barriers can be fixed kind of within the that third one there with scholarships and financial aid. But mainly in admissions, looking at the barriers, admissions in our holistic review, we take into account their work-life family balance to say, hey, this student, they are performing well and they're working, or we're looking into things that may hinder them in that holistic review. Registrar's Office, of course, our Registrar's Office is great in helping getting those credits equivocated, but just making sure that we can get this done in a timely process for all of our students and as fast as possible. And of course, scholarships and financial aid. How fast can we get these award letters out to let them know the true cost of attendance for our institution? Another thing, being a public institution in the Office of Undergraduate Admission, we have to verify their lawful presence and their Georgia residency, which has a huge impact on how much money they have to pay. Of course, Division of Student Life, New Student Transition, and Transition Programs, they handle FACET, which is our new student orientation. So that is something that is removed from us, but we felt that it was vital that they be a part of this. The Counseling Center, the Veterans Resource Center, and Disability Services. These three are really important because within our admission review, we look at the students within their essays and we see are there resources that they will need that pertain to these three offices. Also with the Institute Diversity and Diversity Programs and Center for Academic Success and Academic Advising. So within our admission process, making sure that we're connecting them to these resources. But now it's just an email saying, hey, this student may need this resource, but how can we better do that?
And so through those areas and our campus partners, we wanted to focus on these strategic goals, which is to close that access and persistence gap. We talked about earlier that momentum, keeping that momentum to graduate with this 4-year bachelor's degree, and then also those additional barriers that our underserved and minority populations face based on their special needs. I don't want to say special needs, that sounds kind of not politically correct, but you understand what I'm saying, I'm sorry. And then we wanted to increase our recruitment and retention of minority and underserved populations. We want to be more intentional when we're going out to our APS schools, Atlanta Public School Systems, going beyond Atlanta Public Schools where we're recruiting minority and transfer students, getting more of our recruitment officers and advisors and to team up to go and do this intentional recruiting so that we're recruiting the best students that we can and that we're able to, again, retain them once they're there on campus. And so to better enhance the student experience through multicultural and intercultural experiences, our student diversity programs and our diversity office does a lot of programming, but you all know, like, if you put too many Band-Aids on the same sore, 12 of them are gonna come off, right? I mean, it's not going to functionally work. So you want to make sure you're catering those multicultural and cultural experiences to their specific needs and not just putting an overall blanket over providing programming that's just very blanketed. So we want to be intentional about that. And then we want to develop a more pluralistic approach to campus networks. We have silos at Georgia Tech all over the campus. There are so many of us who are here at this conference and we don't ever get to see each other. We're like, oh, hey. Hey. But we are so spread out. As Evan said, we're going across how many highways now? We're spreading across the Atlanta area, so our branches are branching out, but we want to bring us back together in those central places where it's critical for our student experiences.
And another thing regarding recruitment, so Seth and LaShawn in the back, raise your hands so they can see you. Those are our transfer counselors. That's it. They handle, and I help with recruitment, but they handle the recruitment. They handle the reading of applications. They handle looking at credits for math and lab science courses. So some of this not only has to do with recruiting students, but also recruiting staff as well.
And so, can you press that twice? Press it twice. So we get that out of the way. Campus culture is a big thing for us. And so as we heard your reaction when we talked about the financial aid piece. And so we have to be very intentional, again, about our transparency and our communications to students. Stuff, like I said, everything started talking to me about articulate, I was like looking at him like he was foreign. And I'm like, I know if they're reading this or our community partners are looking at these type of things or the processes that are on our websites, it has to be more clear. It has to be more transparent. There has to be an easier way. So we want to get more transparency in our communications and in that convoluted communication culture that we have in some of our places on campus that are critical to student success. And so academic advising is a big piece. We all know that. Like, they want to make sure they credits are transferred, and we have such a big advising community, but it's still very decentralized model. Every department gets to do what they want to do. We have an advising center for exploratory advising and student success, but it still is a very big gap in communicating across and bringing those consistency in advising policies and practices. So we definitely want that to be one of our biggest feats that we tackle in this one-stop model. And then providing equity to programs and services. Like you said, everything is not a one-size-fits-all for all students. And so we want to make sure that we're providing equitable service and programs and resources to our transfer and minority students. We have to do better at scholarship. We're a research one institution. How many people can just get programs through their programs, provide grants and fellowships, or some type of financial aid or scholarships for these students? That is one of my new roles in my new position as an educational outreach manager, to kind of look at funding opportunities that will support financial aid, scholarships, fellowships, and things like that for our minority students. And so also want to talk about the intercultural and multicultural stimulation, which is a big thing. And you can kind of see why, with all the other reasons, why that would be one of what causes our campus cultures to kind of be what it is. And so, go ahead.
So feasibility concerns, the first thing for us is space. Although our campus is 400 acres, literally where do we put this on campus? Because housing is on one side, the student center is somewhere else, the Office of Admission is in one building, financial aid is on the 3rd floor, registrars is in the bottom of Tech Tower, or has 2 floors in Tech Tower. So it's like, where do we put this where it will be central for our students, but also central for our staff who have to get there and work in this place, which is going to be one of our big considerations for this regarding feasibility. Funding, of course, it takes money. If you want to do scholarships, if you want to have dedicated staff who are going to staff this full time, but also recruiting more staff who will be transfer champions and help retain and recruit these students. Strategic leadership and training, well, of course, you're combining departments. You don't want someone to feel as if they're losing control of their team, but we're working together for a common goal and a common purpose, and training them so that within this one-stop shop, I don't just know admissions, but I know enough about admissions, financial aid, the bursar's office, and housing that I can at least get them pointed in the right direction and give them the resources they need. And intentional assessment, look at minority recruitment. How much effort is being put behind recruiting minority students? And also looking at minority institutions, minority retention. You know, we boast that we have a 95% transfer retention rate, but do we look at that in regards to our minority students? Are they the 5% that's leaving, or are we even considering their staying at the institution? Their minority student experiences. Our minority students are more than athletes and students who want to be in Divine Nine. They have other things they want to do outside of the Black Student Caucus. They have other things they want to do outside of, anything regarding single gender things for their race. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Things are not broken down in just gender, but making sure our students who have various backgrounds, various lifestyles are included in this, and minority graduation rates. Again, every institution loves to boast their graduation rate, but are we looking at that in terms of the students that need the most help and ensuring that they are graduating in an appropriate time frame? Yes, ma'am.
Have Georgia Tech given very big into research to different content? Have they researched any schools that have partnerships, particularly in STEM, with community colleges?
So we've seen some here at the conference, and we've been looking. The problem is here in Georgia, we really don't have community colleges anymore. The one main two-year institution we had, they merged into a larger institution. So in regards to that, and some of the two-year institutions we did have, they made them four-year institutions. So with regards to that, it's kind of hard for us now to recruit there because they're offering four-year degrees in fields that only used to be two-year programs at their institution. So in Georgia, things are a little bit different and are changing. Yes, ma'am.
So where are the transfers from? Other 4 years?
Yeah, other 4 years, because most of them are becoming 4 years. So they're coming from the 4 years, down the street or down in Athens. Not talking about anybody, but those are where our students are coming from. Yes, ma'am.
Or they're transferred from the technical college system.
She said, or they're transferring for the technical college system in Georgia, which our registrar's office will tell you it is hard for those credits to transfer. And so, but yeah, those are the issues that we're facing here in Georgia based on the changes that are being made at the USG and Board of Regents level.
Okay, so as we go before our leaders to present this, we have our value proposition. I'm sorry?
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Thank you. So this is our value proposition for our campus leaders, as Evan and I will be presenting to, with your feedback as well, why this is essential for us to even just get started in conceptually thinking about and proposing this proposition. We want to, again, do the intentional recruitment efforts for our minority students. It would improve our access and awareness of transfer student support services. I was in a meeting right before we came to this conference where we talked about a summer initiative that's catered to our transfer students, but we still have this culture that they are not as cared for as our first year students and other students who are admitted into the institution. And so we still have a lot of work to do, so we want to improve that. We would increase our transparency and communication across our campus partners and networks. That is very big. Email is the primary communication for everybody, but it's not always effective. So, especially when you're dealing with students. And then we want to improve our retention and graduation rates for our minority transfer students, improve their student experiences from the pre-entry enrollment all the way through graduation, and also definitely improve the social, cultural, and academic culture of our institution as a whole. So that is our value proposition. We think that we have a great concept. We have done a lot more research, but you can only put so much in a presentation. So we will be going forward with this idea, and we hope to in the next, I don't know how long, but we want this at Georgia Tech, and so we're going to keep pushing for it. And so I thank you all for being here. We'll take questions, comments at this time. Yes.
Have you all explored peer mentoring, like previous students or current students, to mentor some of those?
So one of the programs, yes, one of the programs that I have started in my department that has also been asked to go college level for our College of Engineering is the Peer Advising Leadership Program. So this is the 2-year mark of that program. I did a pilot in the first year, and then 2 years. The first year was just undergraduate peer advising. We trained them as extensions of the academic advisors, and then they helped in all of the orientations and any other recruitment throughout the year, and advising, general advising in the office in a triage format. This year, this past fall, I did that across undergraduate and graduate programs. So our graduate orientation and recruitment, they are now serving in a peer advising capacity. They're trained in the summer to start operating and serving in the fall. And then the College of Engineering is looking at that as a college-wide initiative, but as I told him, I don't have the capacity right now for college, so it's just me.
Is that a paid?
It is a paid position, so I do pay the students. So for my graduate state, because they're paid students, paid employees or GRAs already, they receive a one-time stipend. The undergraduates, they are paid hourly by the events that they serve in. This year, I will transition to a single event payment model where they will receive $50 for internal events or $100 per day for external, like when we travel to conferences. This past year, we did ABRCAMS in California, and we took 3 graduate students and 2 undergraduate students, and they were a part of the recruiting.
Okay, thank you. In regards to buying from the incoming transfer students, how do you go about that? How do you market to them and get them to actually stay through the program?
You want to talk about the Institute Transfer Program?
So what we do have within our institution, there are some peer mentoring groups that buy in, mainly for our engineering students through SEED, which is the Center for Engineering and Education Diversity. So they have their own peer mentoring program, but again, that applies mainly to and it's for our minority students, but it's only for those in the College of Engineering. So it doesn't apply to those in the sciences or the arts or anything like that. But SEED, they have seen great success in increasing retention because they have money and backing and funding for their group of students. But again, and SEED has scholarships for students that they offer once a student has enrolled through their first semester. But again, we have to get some of this money pre-enrollment to make sure they have a financial outlook of knowing how much they're going to pay out each semester.
Could you explain the funding thing again, students in Georgia, how does that work? Because they don't get scholarships?
So the way it works here is for Georgia residents who graduate from a Georgia high school, they can qualify for 2 scholarships, the top one being Zell, and then one below that being Hope, and the Zell covers a very large portion of their tuition, and then Hope covers a smaller portion of their tuition. But in regards to receiving money from the institution, there is none. They find out what they qualify for via Hope and scholarships. I mean, not scholarships, but what's the word I'm looking, through federal loans, but there is no Georgia Tech student aid given to them pre-enrollment for a financial aid letter.
I guess a follow-up to that, does that affect as far as your social economic diversity that you're checking?
Yes.
It does. We've seen, we've talked about this, the amount of families that are coming into Georgia Tech where their income is over $150,000 has expanded greatly. And so again, that is not the average for the state of Georgia. Georgia is nowhere near that because a lot of us work in education. And so the thing is, we have to begin to look at how we're going to help fund these students, because if they're making that much money, they have no problem paying out of pocket for that remaining balance. But our students who don't have that, she can tell you we have a homeless gen population on our campus of students who literally, they're living somewhere on campus or living somewhere around the city, but still yet coming to Georgia Tech because they can't afford anything outside of tuition. Yeah, then you right here.
I'm going to piggyback off of those guys. What about your non-traditional students? Are they not able to receive aid at all either?
No, again, a lot of that's going to be post-enrollment. So after you complete, your first semester or your first year, there are some scholarships they can qualify for. And downside to that, they often have to approach the school or the college to get that funding. That's not something that financial aid will automatically look at to put on their financial aid award letter for the following year.
And so for my major, we have several of our sponsors and our donors who build scholarships in our department. But the criteria doesn't cater to still transfer students. So it's still very difficult for them, even in-house in their major school or the college, to receive scholarships that are specifically, that they're able to meet those criteria and benchmarks.
So this is kind of it's a little change of subject and back to kind of the learning community. I know Georgia Tech's known for like their living learning communities. You don't have a transfer specific one?
So housing reserves a portion of their floor. But if they want to do that, again, that's something that happens post-enrollment. Again.
That handoff you're talking about,
Mhm.
we have a really big transfer living learning experience. It's a whole
Mhm.
building, it's just transfers. We do programming for transfers, and then they come to the transfer center, so they're
Yeah.
just kind of streamlined. But the other thing in terms of, because you've got a great plan, do you have a like transfer success committee or any coalition of campus partners to help?
So again, there's probably 12 people here from Georgia Tech, and I know of 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and that's because I've bumped into them and asked what school are they at.
So maybe community, like,
So, yeah.
a team.
So the people are there, but the team isn't together. So, again, I don't know, it could be 20 people here from Georgia Tech, and I literally do not know who they are. Yeah, it's a true silo within our institution. There was a hand back here in the back, I think.
Sorry, I don't mean to harp on the range or anything, but for federal need-based Pell Grants and things like that, are they not getting that, or it's just state?
They're getting that, but they're not getting anything beyond that. So Hope, Zell, and whatever the federal government says we'll put toward it, and for lack of a better term, that's it. There was a hand over here. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how many student parents you have on campus?
Students,
that are parents?
Yeah.
No.
Just at the University of Minnesota, one thing that might be helpful is we have someone who runs a student parent family office. In addition to helping them kind of acclimate to campus and ideas and support groups, she's also a licensed social worker and then is kind of the resident expert on like child care grants for students and family housing in the area for students, and that just might be an interesting resource to think about.
So one of the other initiatives that I'm also working on is with our foster homeless gen. We just got to the point where we have a food pantry for the campus, but now we're looking at the housing piece. We're looking at housing vouchers and how to build housing specific for that population. And so like I said, that is a really small subset of our population. We've never, I don't think from our end, and at least in the College of Engineering or for other communities that I'm involved in for special underrepresented populations, that we've even assessed like students that are parents. We haven't even thought of that. I haven't.
Yeah. And I know another thing is we are located in Midtown. How many people are here from Atlanta? Atlanta people? Yeah, so they will tell you anything around our campus, a studio is not going to run less than maybe $1,000 to $1,200, and that's being cheap. We're talking 400 square feet, a kitchenette, and like a piece of a closet. Like me, I live in Lithonia, and I have over an hour drive each day. I used to live in Peachtree Corners in an apartment, was paying $1,400 for a 2-bed, 2-bath, only 1,200 square feet. So, and I had to live an hour away from campus just to get that. And again, transportation here in Atlanta, Marta ain't that great. Our transportation is a big issue on people getting to campus without cars. And that's a reality that we have to face.
But also with that housing issue, we found that for our foster homeless gen, them getting federal financial aid, like you said, through the Zell or Hope, it's even harder for them to get that because they can't prove income or residency. So that kind of think about that when you're looking at housing supplements or housing aid. They can't prove that because they haven't come from that past or that economic bracket.
So we have time for, we'll do 1, 2, and 3, and then we have to like dip out of here before they put us out.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So 1 and then 2, and then we'll cut it short. Was there one over here?
Just something to think about the financial aid piece. A lot of our students, which at DXR, are Asian or East Indian, and a lot of those cultures practice group economics. So these parents and grandparents have saved for their child's tuition. So the financial aid area is not as great as you may think it is for our particular population of students.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned what your tuition is, so what, after aid, what does that out-of-pocket expense look like for students?
It depends on their income bracket. Remember, he said he had to verify, we have to verify income and residency is based on their parental status. And I can speak from that, based on my children going to Georgia colleges. The amount of aid that they receive is going to be still based on that parent or family income.
Right, the tuition itself is.
It runs, if you're looking, I know tuition only is about 13-ish around there, but that's like tuition, that's like not like housing and everything else. But for out of state, if you're looking at tuition and housing, that's running about 40-ish plus a year. Yeah, just sticker price. So thank you, everybody. We have business cards up here. Thank you.